Mr. Pankaj Kumar, are you there? Hello. Connectivity. Mr. Gupta, are you there? Hello. Yes, sir. Good morning. We are just waiting for Dr. Roy to come in with the other guests, right? You can come online. We'll be there in another 3 or 4 minutes. Okay. Do you get me, sir? Honored friends, please be seated. Thank you. Just to start off, welcoming our guests in front of us, our warmest regards to them who have joined here physically and to them who are there virtually who are going to join us. This is a wonderful morning, a wintry one, a little bit of chill in the air, and we are at a venue called or named after Rabindranath Tagore. This venue started in the year of 2012, and it is almost completing its 9th year and entering the 10th year. So we start off with Gurudev's lines, which are today very justifiable with this morning and the program and the conference. If you will allow me, respected guests. When I go back from hence, let this be my parting word, that what I have seen is unsurpassable. I have tasted of the hidden honey of this that expands on the ocean of light, and thus am I blessed let this be my parting word. In this playhouse of infinite forms, I have had my play, and there have I caught sight of him that is formless. My whole body and my limbs have thrilled with his touch, who is beyond touch. And if the end comes here, let it come. Let this be my parting word. Rabindranath Bolton? Okay. We have a small little shift from the welcome note because Professor Pahel is there already with us. Dr. Pahel, thank you very much. We had a discussion with him to start off this meeting today. I'll talk about it later, but we would like to invite Dr. Pahel over here right away. Prior to that, I would like to talk a little bit about him. Sir, just be with us. We come back. Professor Shahid Pahel, an Indian theoretical chemist, is currently director of Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Kolkata. He was professor in Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, one of the few renowned and prestigious institutes in India. Also was director of CSIR. We have him with us virtually today over here. Could we welcome him by joining our hands together, please? Thank you. We are honored to have you, sir, over here. You can start. Stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Shivaji. Thank you, Professor Shambhajit Roy, and all others for inviting me to address in the beginning of this wonderful moment to celebrate the 10th years of the Center for Materials at IISER, Kolkata. It's also, I say, it's a celebration of sustainable sciences, art, philosophy, and innovation. And I think there is no better way to describe the overarching theme of this meeting. I am very happy that Professor Prasanta Panigrahi, despite some problems, have been able to join online. He is also one of the conveners along with Professor Shambhajit Roy. In fact, material science today is an overarching theme of science. Not only the theme of sustainability is a very, very important theme which covers almost all of material science today. If you look at from the normal hard materials, inorganic material, that is how the material science was. In fact, the material science really started, I remember, back in 60s and 70s. The origin was actually metallurgical engineering that time. Many people would recall that it was the metallurgical engineering which gave rise to material science. So how do you extract metals and so on? And so basically the material science was initially the forte of inorganic chemists and inorganic materials. But then it changed very rapidly as we turned towards much more interdisciplinary thought. And today we have materials which are called organic materials, materials which are no longer hard materials but soft materials, and with multifunctional materials. And of course, the advent of nanoscale in the material science has completely changed the scenario. It now has got the real character of a functional materials, because at the nanoscale, many things are possible to do which is not possible at a bulk scale. In particular, catalysis, for example, is one that I can think of, and several other functional things which you can do. Purification of gases, environment, many of those things can be done today by materials at the nanoscale. The sustainability by itself is, of course, a very important catchword, and one can very easily see the contribution of material science into the sustainability. The sustainability essentially is using resources of energy using resources without depleting them. So one of the major source, for example, is solar energy. You could have hydrogen, bio waste, and so on. And each of them to be converted, each of those resources to be converted into a usable form of energy, fuels, and so on, you require a catalysis. You require materials, maybe at the nanoscale, maybe at a different length scale, materials which will enable conversion of solar to electricity, solar to heat, thermal, and similarly generation of hydrogen energy storage, onboard storage, conversion to electricity, and so on. So there are so many different forms of sustainability, and each of them is enabled by the development of material science. So the material science has made tremendous impact in our life, not only in fundamental science, but also in our life, society, and the environment. And I think this is indeed a very great title to celebrate. At the same time, material science has tremendously benefited from the growth of theory and computation, analytical tools like spectroscopy. When material science started, it was known to be a completely experimental science in the old days of 60s and 70s. But today it has changed because there are really fine tools of spectroscopy where people can look at the materials at a length scale, which was just not possible before. Then, of course, have come the techniques of theory and computation, which now can simulate materials from the atomic length scale to the bulk. And as all of you know, that is known as the multi-scale design, multi-scale simulation, where you can go from the atomistic length scale or electronic length scale of quantum mechanics to a larger length scale of atomistic, proteins, and then beads, mesoscale, like polymers, and so on, to the bulk length scale. And you have different methods for different length scale, which we call the horses for the courses. Depending on the course, you put your horse. So I think it's very exciting, although one theoretically would like to thread them together, and that is what people are trying to do, that from a more exact quantum mechanics, how can I get those approximations, which are used progressively for larger length scale. So the use of theory, spectroscopy, the tools of experimentation, people now know how to synthesize materials in various ways. I think the material science has come a long way. It's basically a science which is ubiquitous. The chemistry and physics and biology, it's cutting across all forms of science, computational science, and so on. In between, of course, people are now talking of quantum information, quantum technology. Professor Panigrahi himself is working on that. And the material science has done a lot of work in getting the quantum technology to the ground. So I think Soumyajit's own group, and we have a large number of groups, like Sayan Bhattacharya, he already has an institute, he used to head an institute center for advanced functional material. Sayan Bhattacharya, then we have a host of inorganic chemists at the IISER Kolkata. I can't name all of them, but I know that Sayan Bhattacharya and Soumyajit are behind it. But there are so many great people at our own institution, inorganic, organic chemists, who are actually working on the materials of various kinds. And I think IISER Kolkata takes pride, I must say, in their own activities in the material science. I'm very happy, of course, to welcome today the chief guest, who is going to deliver the plenary lecture, Professor Glenn Martin. I think he is going to talk on the Earth Constitution solution, a design for a living planet. And I think that's a very, very useful topic, and I'm sure all of us will be very keen to hear Professor Martin's talk. I'm very happy that he has been able to join us, and it's really great effort by the conveners Soumyajit Roy and Prashant Panigrahi to bring this particular topic to all of us. It's a very, very hearty topic. The fact that it coincides with the 10 years of our Center of Material Science in some way is suddenly a very happy occasion to celebrate the sustainability of the world. I think with these few words, and thanking all the conveners, welcoming the guests, and wishing a great success of this meeting. I see there are a lot of good talks which are lined up. Unfortunately, I have another meeting, so I have to leave. But I'm sure all of you will enjoy the talks and have meaningful participation. because this is the science which I can say almost everybody is pursuing, including biologists. So almost everybody is now in the material science in some form or other. So it's really great to see a confluence of physicists, chemists, mathematicians, biologists, computational science, all together. There are people of different who's who are actually participating in this. So with this, let me also end my inaugural talk, and I wish this conference great success. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. We'll just take a moment of you because students of IISER, they are here just to offer our thanks virtually though. We would have been very proud if you would have been with us this morning, but just a small token of gratitude from our side. We have with us Sritoma, Parumita, and Ronak from IISER. So,
yeah, my thanks to all the students, student volunteers, and all the students. Without students, nothing can happen. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Ron, we'll go for that. And we would like our honored guests to come in front, if we call this the dais, to just light the lamp for today's journey. So, I would request Sritoma and Shuno to come forward, and Kushik also to be there. Would you please come forward and we can have this lamp lighting today. Can we have the light, please? So,
I think with the lamps being lighted, it's my great pleasure now to declare this conference open.
thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. We have with us, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Devashish Shen, whose name has gone synonymous with the building, developing, beautifying, glorifying new town. A loud round of applause for this wonderful and remarkable academician and administrator. Thank you, sir. Sri Devashish Shen, he joined the IIS in 1985. He graduated from Presidency College and got his post MSc diploma from Shah Institute of Nuclear Physics. He got his diploma in public administration from ENA, France. He has been trained at the JFK School, Harvard University, and IMF Washington, DC, USA. He is presently the chairman, MD of HIDCO over here, not to talk of the other institutes and organizations. We are very thankful that he has given his time and he's here. Maybe call him on dais for his honorable contribution out here today. So.
Good morning, everybody. Very warm congratulations for holding this very remarkable seminar on material science and sustainability. A special welcome to Dr. Glenn. And of course, I am quite sure that a lot of good things will emerge in this year of sustainability for material sciences. I will not talk much, but from my own perspective of urban development, we are laying a very great deal of emphasis on sustainable development. The new town Kolkata, where we are right now, is a certified platinum rated green city, and we are doing a lot of efforts in promoting cycling, planting trees, making solar energy, and generally trying to imbibe the culture of a zero waste circular economy. Nothing should be wasted, everything should be recycled, and we have a famous zero shop where people can donate their used clothes and we recycle it and send it across to other sections of the society. We also collect plastics, we also collect and imbue the theory of segregation of solid waste at source so that it is easier to make recycling a success. But I will just point one point, and that is the only point contribution perhaps I would like to make this very, very international crowd of eminent scientists and students is that the huge opportunity that is now coming after COP26 in Glasgow recently. We all know that by 2070, India is committed to go completely into renewable sources of energy. All the huge coal reserves, the thermal electricity and everything will be wound down in just 50 years' time. And this throws up very, very interesting possibilities in the realm of solar energy in particular, but also hydrogen energy, storage. Already a lot of work is being tried from lithium ion to sodium ion in India. And I would definitely like to see India leading the world in the matter of storage batteries using sodium ions. In Newtown itself, right in front of Ravindra, where we are there in the pavement outside, we are doing an experiment on solar energy to be generated from pavements, from footpath where you and I walk. Urban space is very costly. Where do you keep these solar panels? So for keeping the solar panels, one good idea is to cover all the footpaths in all the cities with solar pavers. Usually this is not possible because when people walk, it might break, and the occasional car parking on the footpath, breaking all rules, it will break normal solar panels. So you need toughened solar panels. And I'm happy to say that in collaboration with a European company, we have already ordered for a demonstration pilot project in front of the pavement, in front of Ravindra Tirtha. If it succeeds, it will pave a great way of generating energy from the roads. So I think in the matter of electric vehicles, in the matter of storage, in the matter of generating solar panels from newer materials, from flexible materials, from transparent solar panels which can be used as window panes. It's already in operation in certain companies in Australia, where like thin film solar panel can be just pasted on your window pane, and while you get clear sunlight, the energy is also extracted. So a huge possibility exists. 15,000 gigawatts of energy now being produced through coal will be produced through non-conventional means, including but not limited to hydrogen and solar and geothermal and wind. So we are in need of new and efficient means of storage and production of non-conventional energy, and this is going to change the future of India, the industry of India, and especially now that we are talking from Bengal. Bengal had missed the first IT revolution because of hesitation by the policymakers. This time it's now time to jump. 15,000 gigawatts of energy from solar. Can you imagine the possibilities that will come in the solar energy industry? Can you imagine the number of people who would be working there? Can you imagine the transition from normal vehicles to electric vehicles, repairs, parts, everything, completely new possibilities being thrown up. If we do not catch the bandwagon now, we never will. this is the time to act. And therefore, I will urge upon the panelists and the discussion fora and the speakers who are there, please concentrate here. Let's try and lead India, let Bengal lead India, let India lead the world, and let everybody come together for catching on of not more than 1.5 degrees of Celsius warm in the next 50 years, which essentially means create 15,000 gigawatts of energy from non-conventional energy. Let's angle for that, and we would be leading the world. Thank you very much.
So that was Mr. Sen very beautifully talking about paving the future from the pavements in a nutshell. We would like to thank him in our small way this morning. And we have once again students from IISER. We have, I understand, Parliamentary here. We have Sritama. Please, round up now. Thank you, sir. We are already into the conference, but in a short while, I'll ask today's convener, Dr. Roy, to come up and speak a few words. But prior to that, I'll just try to put a little bit of emotional touch to today's focus and activity and the scope of the conference. We meet here today to celebrate the science and philosophy of sustainability, to speak and listen about a world that is transient yet permanent. Perpetual time, Father Time, flows eternally and yet holds us in togetherness. Sustainable practices can and does relate to the natural world as well as other important issues such as poverty, consumption, community, and health. An interaction between natural and social systems, and as to how those interactions affect the challenge of sustainability, meeting the needs of the present and future generations in various aspects like artificial life systems, education and entrepreneurship, innovative technology, to give and take of taste and perceptions amongst various cultures, purification of water, to the eternal quest, who am I and from where I came. All come under the scope of this conference. Honored guests, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, we all know the longest journey is the journey to one's heart. And once we begin doing something from the heart, H-E-A-R-T, once we begin doing something from the heart, he becomes the art. Thank you. We will request Dr. Roy to come on stage, please.
Good morning, everyone. So first of all, I would like to thank everybody for being there and for coming in this occasion to grace the occasion. It's indeed a great pleasure just to tell you about the scope of this meeting or the scope of this conference is that we are trying or we are in the path, a journey to celebrate sustainability, sustainable sciences. And we have a sustainable science starts with that of philosophy. And here what we have is basically a journey. The scope of this is to celebrate this journey where we all are in some way or the other. How are we in this journey? We are in this journey by our own presence. So what we mean by that? The scope of this conference, Ek Prithvi, Ek Pahel, Ek Soch, which means one world. one moment, and one life, one thought. So the moment is the time that weaves in as we breathe. The world is the matter that is intertwined with chances and possibilities. And then that's how chance and matter and time, they interact to create the life that we live in. So today we have with us exciting inaugural lecture by Professor Pahel. We had with us a fantastic note by Sri Shen, who are designers of institution as well as urban planning and cities. It's a great opportunity for the students, especially, to get enriched with these lectures that can inspire and involve young minds. When I was a young student like you, I had seen a very beautiful remark. The earth is one. And then I was led to the book by James Lovelock, who talked of Gaia theory, who talked of self-controlling or self-organizing system, an organism, a systems design thinking he talked of. We know of C.P. Snow, who talked of cultures of differences, although living within the same world. This is an attempt to synthesize these cultures. This is an attempt to celebrate science, and we are on a journey. And this journey celebrates these 10 years of material science, and we are on a journey with all the young kids who have been there with us, and we have realized that this journey becomes the destination. So I hope you will enjoy the journey with these thoughts, which is the open scope. And then with these thoughts, we will start the journey with a philosophical bent of mind. We are privileged to have Professor Glenn here. We are privileged to have Professor Guel here. And we are also very thankful for getting this opportunity to listen to them. We will have some scientific talks from the students here, Shaunik and Apabrita. We will have a lecture by Professor Pei, and we will also have a lecture later by Professor Arun Chakraborty. And with the hope that we transcend from philosophy to science, and then with time, we touch art, and that this is perhaps the beginning of the journey, and we hope that the journey becomes a destination. So that is the scope of this conference that I would think of, I thought of, and I hope in the next couple of hours, we will be enriched. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roy. Our journey today will take us to lands unknown and unexplored, perhaps. But for sure, someday we'll reach that destination. We would now come over to a remarkable surprise. Awestruck we are of having a gentleman from America. He comes to India to attend another conference, and he makes time, he finds time, and he comes here to celebrate and champion the cause of sustainability at this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, there are times in our lives when we really are awestruck by the presence of certain people who are there, not very close to us physically, but mentally, they are traveling miles across. And such a person is there, respected Mr. Glenn T. Martin, who is an American philosopher, writer, and social reformer. He is also a researcher, teacher, and holds administrative positions in many institutions in the USA and abroad. Mr. Glenn T. Martin is President of the World Constitution and Parliament Association, WCPA. He is the author of many books and dozens of articles on philosophical foundations of democratic world law, the quest for human liberation, and issues of global peace with justice and sustainability. His most recent book that appeared with Cambridge Scholars Publishers 2018 is entitled Global Democracy and Human Self-Transcendence. This morning, we have with us this wonderful gentleman who is going to give the plenary lecture today, The Earth Constitution Solution, Design for a Living Planet. Let us applaud him and request him to be on stage, sir. So,
I have to unpack a little bit since we just got off the plane a few minutes ago. I hear from one thing.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, your voice is very low.
Yeah, I think there's enough for everybody in the room. Can someone please pass these around? And this will give you something that you can take away with you so that, you know, there's probably, you can bring the rest back when you get to it. I also have a flyer about our work and I don't think I have enough for everybody, but if you're interested after our session today, after the whole program, I'll be happy to give, if you want to come up, I'll be happy to give you one. My book that just came out this summer is called exactly the same title as the lecture that we have. It's called The Earth Constitution Solution, Designed for a Living Planet. And I argue there that we will not have a sustainable world system unless we human beings unite, we join together under a democratic world constitution. And I have a cover. It's in many editions, many languages, but this is what we call the pocket edition. And you can see it's called The Constitution for the Federation of Earth. It was written by hundreds of world citizens working together over a period of 23 years, from their first meeting in Innsbruck, Austria in 1968, through 3 more subsequent meetings until they finally met in Troia, Portugal in 1991 and declared the Constitution finished and ready for ratification. Since that time, the World Constitution and Parliament Association, the organization of which I'm president, has been working to get people to study this, to think about it, to have seminars about it, and if they're committed enough, to work for its ratification. And we're in the business, I'll mention that in just a few moments in my talk, we're in the business of actually trying to lay the groundwork for an Earth Federation, a groundwork that is permitted and empowered by the Earth Constitution. In its last article, Article 19, it says that human beings have the duty and the right to create provisional world government. So in the lovely introductory talk, it was said that I'm here in India for a conference, which is not quite accurate. Because what we're having, beginning on Human Rights Day, December 10th, and going to 11th and 12th, what we're having is the 15th session of the Provisional World Parliament. It's not a conference. conferences are a dime a dozen. All over the world, there are conferences. And everybody goes home from the conference feeling great, and nothing changes. Right? We are actually laying the groundwork for institutional change on this planet. And that institutional change, we're creating the infrastructure called for by the Earth Constitution, and a voting system called for by the Earth Constitution, so that within the frame of the old world, we're laying the groundwork for an emerging new world, which will transform our condition on this planet. And that's what I'd like to talk with you a little bit about today, why we need to transform the world that we live in if we're going to have a sustainable future on the Earth. We all know that the global environmental movement began in the 1960s. When I graduated from high school in 1962, a book was published called Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, a biologist. And in that book, she warned that the springtime, instead of new life being born in the springtime, what might well happen is that the world is moving toward a time when the biology of the world will die, will not be reborn every springtime. And after that, climate science began to be founded, right? In the 1970s, James Hansen, who was the head of NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration of the United States, which had the most powerful computers in the country at the time, they modeled the future, the climate future, on their supercomputers. And what James Hansen found was frightening, right? It looked like the planet was in a process of heating up and transforming its climate situation that looked very dangerous for the future of human beings. And from that, and from James Lovelock's book on Gaia that was mentioned a few moments ago, and other people working at that time, they began to develop something that could only develop with supercomputers. Now, you and I have computers on our lap today, or in our telephones, which are more powerful than the computers they were using. But what this has made possible, what this computer revolution has made possible, is really modeling the Earth system as a whole. And therefore, climate science, which almost did not exist, it is a real discipline before the 1960s and 70s. Climate science has now exploded around the world, and there are thousands, as you know, thousands of scientists. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Science, sanctioned by the UN, has thousands of scientists, and they're all working on the oceans, on the ice caps, on the atmosphere, in various aspects. But the key thing that we need to understand is that they're treating the Earth as a system. The biosphere of the Earth, the ecology of the Earth, is one integrated system, which means that all the aspects of our Earth, the oceans, the atmosphere, the green plants, the forests, the hydro processes of the Earth, the creatures living on the Earth, all of these are integrated together. And over the last 12,000 years or so, during the Holocene period, even though there's been a lot of variation in heat and cold, and it's been a fairly consistent climate, fairly consistent, which allowed for human beings to begin flourishing and soon colonizing the entire entire planet. The UN has created, as we all know, the Sustainable Development Goals. From the year 2015 to the year 2030, we need to end poverty. We need to end the process of heating up the planet. We need to reduce fossil fuels. We need to find equality for women and men in the world. We need to embrace diversity. All of these are part of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We need to redesign our cities so that they're clean and they're environmentally friendly. But in the chapter 6 of this book, I show that these goals are unachievable. Think of the history of the United Nations with respect to this. In 1945, it was founded as a treaty of sovereign nations. And it still is. It has a Security Council, as we know, of 5 permanent members who have a veto power over everything in the UN. But that's not the only issue, because the UN gets together in a General Assembly, and each of those 193 nations that come together in the General Assembly consider themselves sovereign, which means they have absolute rights vis-a-vis one another, and there is no authority encompassing them all that can bind them together into a cohesive force for sustainability, for the future of the planet. So the environmental crisis began to occur. People in the 1960s. In 1972, in Stockholm, the UN called its first giant environmental meeting. And they said, scientists came from all over the world. They said, the world is in crisis. We've got to do something. 20 years later, so they began a series of meetings, and almost regularly. It wasn't just every few years, but there were major points in this development, right? 20 years later, in 1992, the famous UN meeting in Rio de Janeiro, right? Scientists from all over the world are there. Representatives of global civil society are there. Representatives of all the nations are there. US President George H. Bush came into the assembly, and he was booed by the conference, because the United States is one of the main polluters in the world, and it wasn't about to conform to what was needed. But the real conference passed Agenda 21, which meant that by the 21st century, major changes needed to take place in the amount of carbon emissions that were being created by all the industry, all the transportation on the planet. The 21st century came, and in the year 2002, the UN had another big meeting in Johannesburg, South Africa, and coming together all over the world again. The crisis is even worse than it had been 30 years earlier. And they acknowledged that nothing had been done. There had been no significant change. The amount of carbon emissions was increasing worldwide. A few nations are making fairly cosmetic changes, but nothing for the planet as a whole. As a whole, it's getting worse, right? So the UN got together and they created the Millennium Development Goals, right? And these were in force between the year 2000 and 2015. So for those years where the world is supposed to be striving for these goals, which included reducing carbon emissions, and all the things that are necessary to create sustainability on this planet and to prevent the heating process, the greenhouse process, from going beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade. The year 2015 came, and it was acknowledged that it had been a failure. The world had not reduced emissions, and so on. So if you read the UN documents, they got together and they were asking why were the Millennium Development Goals not a success? And they decided that they were not a success because they hadn't been refined enough, hadn't been specific enough, and hadn't elaborated enough of the factors. This is very important because the UN is recognizing that there are many factors that are inherent in sustainability. It isn't just reducing carbon emissions. We've got to address global poverty. We've got to address the global diminution of women worldwide. We've got to address the vast slums, the urban renewal that we talked about earlier today, and also rural regeneration is necessary for soils that are being depleted and so on. And we've got to address the problems of war and peace. It's part of an integrated solution. In other words, they're recognizing that all these factors of our lives on this planet are part of the solution. But nevertheless, I go over these Sustainable Development Goals in the book. Nevertheless, the 15,000-word document on the Sustainable Development Goals, the planetary population explosion. They use the word population 5 times, in 15,000 words, 5 times. And it's always in a insignificant way, you know, the population of young people in a country or something like that. Never the problem of population. But we all know from going back to the 1960s and 70s when the scholars began talking about the population explosion, right? Since 1962, when I graduated from high school, at that time the world had 3 billion people in it. Right? Now we're approaching 8 billion people. And in the history of species, the geological history of species, there's a common feature about species and their possible extinction and so on. Species overshoot. They can, under certain conditions, they multiply, and they multiply until whatever resources that are supporting them are no longer adequate, and the species can die off. And they began articulating the fact that this is what human beings are doing. We're in serious overshoot. How many people can the planet comfortably sustain? There are different estimates. Right? I met a gentleman a couple days ago in India, a scholar who said it was 2 billion people. Jeremy Rifkin, a prominent environmental scholar, says 5 billion people. Right? So here we have the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They decided that the problem was the Millennium Development Goals weren't complicated enough, weren't detailed enough. So they articulate another set of goals, additional set of goals from the year 2015 to 2030. And they say, we've got to attain all these goals by the year 2030. And they never mention that we've got to reduce the planetary population and control it. They never, also, goal 16, peace. We need peace. And if you read the description under goal 16, They talk about peace within nations. Nations have got to work within themselves to adjudicate their problems and create a peaceful environment so that the nations can work towards sustainability. They never talk about the planetary war system. The war system where most of the nations of these 193 nations in the world are militarized to the teeth. And they spend $1.8 trillion US per year on weapons and war, including the nuclear weapons that if they're ever used are going to wipe out humanity. Now here we have the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and somehow sustainability on this planet doesn't have anything to do with the war system, and spending $1.8 trillion on wasting it down the toilet of war when that could be spent on environmental transformation, right? Protection, and so on. These goals are, that's why I argue that they're ideological, right? There are some thinkers in the United States that say, the United States has a culture of exceptionalism. They think that somehow the United States is exceptional in the world. No one else, no other country has the right to invade whoever they want to invade. But the US can do it, right? We invaded Afghanistan, we invade Iraq, we overthrow Libya, we're there in Syria trying to overthrow the present government of Syria. The United States is exceptional, right? But there are also thinkers who say that the United States, that nothing happens at the UN without the consent of the United States. And in some sense, that might be true. Why is there no mention of population? Now the scholars who are writing the Sustainable Development Goals in the UN, the experts and researchers, they know very well that the Earth population is unsustainable and getting worse every year. 80 million new people every year, 80 million new mouths to feed every year. It's like adding a country the size of Mexico each year to the country. Where are we going to fit all these people? How are we going to have a flourishing population? Because sustainability, as you know, means a flourishing population in the present without taking away from the ability of future generations to flourish as well, right? But you and I, and everything that goes on right now, we flew on a plane to get here from Delhi to Kolkata, unsustainable, right? All those planes, they're taking away from the ability of future generations to flourish. We get in a car and we drive here to this wonderful meeting and so on in using fossil fuel, taking away from the ability of future generations to flourish. And certainly the militarism of the world is absolutely unsustainable. For one thing, military weapons, when they're used, they're using depleted uranium weapons, which are deadly for the environment. They leave low-level radiation. The country of Iraq is full of low-level radiation, increasing the cancer rate and the fetal deformity rate in that country because the U.S. just doesn't care, right? It is the exceptional nation. But it isn't just the U.S., as you know. Many nations are militarized, and they all say they have to be militarized. India has to have nuclear weapons because Pakistan has them, and because China is a threat, and so on. So you have this arms race. You have this continual, every nation claiming absolute sovereignty and absolute rights. How are we going to have sustainability in this kind of environment? Completely ignored by the Sustainable Development Goals. The third thing that is ignored by the UN Sustainable Development Goals is the truth, the framework that the sustainable economists have said over and over. Gustav Speth, in his book, The End of Capitalism, A Bridge to a Sustainable World. Herman E. Daly in his book, Beyond Growth. Kate Raworth, a British economist, in her 2007 book called Donut Economics. All of them say that economics has to be transformed from a growth mantra to a non-growth. Herman E. Daly says, sustainability means development without growth beyond the carrying capacity of the planet, where development means qualitative change, not quantitative increase. Qualitative change. We need to find ways of living, ways of being on this earth that find quality in life, in the things that we do, in the art, in the literature, in the culture, in the spirituality, in the joy of living, not in possessing more and more, not in increasing amount of physical possessions that we have. And we have to have this planet-wide, right? Not just in Kolkata or here or there. We got to have this planet-wide, right? Development without growth. And yet, read the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. They're predicated on growth. Over and over, it says in that document that growth is absolutely essential. Every nation has to be concerned with its GDP, and growing its GDP will give it the resources to convert to sustainable. So here we have, we have on this planet a growth model, right? Led by the U.S., which part of its ideological domination of the UN says that the only solutions are growth solutions. Free market, they call it. Free market, just let everybody grow and as greedy as possible and make as much money as possible. And somehow, Adam Smith says, somehow miraculously, the greatest good of the greatest number will show up. He calls it, probably the invisible hand. Right? If you just let everybody be greedy, everybody compete, everybody try to make as much money as possible, an invisible hand, he says, will give us the greatest. But there is no such a hand, right? Since Adam Smith wrote, today we're living in a situation where a tiny, tiny group of people, less than 1% of the Earth's population, own more than 50% of the wealth in the world. And the bottom 50% of humanity, they live in hell. People say, oh, things are progressing, right? But the mantra is, the dogma of capitalism is that the only legitimate way to address poverty is growth, right? So if you grow the whole economy, you're going to improve those at the lowest level, which is true in a limited sense. But growing the whole economy, which raises those at the lowest level as well, makes those on top richer and richer and richer and more powerful, and destroys democracy everywhere, right? In the United States, 10% of the population in the United States own 95% of the wealth in the country, right? Now, what does that do for democracy, right? Doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you can't get elected, you can't. Well, there's a few exceptions here and there, but you can't be a politician, you can't run the country unless you get donations from these super wealthy people. And so they really run the show. And do you think they're interested in sustainability? Not on your life. You can read some of the books, Naomi Klein's book, which says, that this changes everything, she says. That's the title of her book. And she's a Canadian journalist, very well known. She spent 5 years traveling around the world and documents the millions and millions of dollars that are spent by corporations, greenwashing, calling into question global warming, pretending that they're environmentally friendly. Right, all kinds of logos with, you have green corporations, green, all kinds of advertising, millions of dollars in advertising because they're not doing anything. They're not taken as serious. Right? So all of this is ignored by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals document. And there's one more thing. In that document, there's a number of different points that it makes in its introductory section. You can read it online. Just go to the UN website and call up the Sustainable Development document. Item 18 in that document says that every nation has absolute sovereignty over its internal resources, its economy, and its internal economic processes. Every nation has absolute sovereignty over its resources. What are the implications of this? Right? This is a kind of economic focus of the dogma of absolute sovereignty, territorial sovereignty that the UN itself was premised on in 1945. Right? It's a treaty of sovereign nations. So if you're a sovereign nation, that means you have the right to militarize yourself as much as you want. Right? You can spend all your money on military, and you almost feel you need to because the enemy is always doing that, and so there's this perpetual arms race. Right? Sovereign nations have a right to do this, but under this item 18 that I just mentioned to you, think of the implications of that. Every nation has sovereignty over its own internal resources. That means Brazil, right now, under a right-wing dictator named Bolsonaro, has the right to destroy the lungs of the earth. Right? The lungs of the earth are there in that Amazon basin. And they have the legal right, because it's the internal resource of a sovereign nation, they have a legal right to destroy the lungs of the planet. Right? The United States in 2015 famously withdrew from the Paris Climate Accord. Right? What right does the world's largest polluter have to withdraw from a climate agreement? The legal right. It's under the UN system. It's perfectly legal. They have the right as a sovereign nation not to participate, even if it means, and it would mean if the United States isn't part of this vast transformation to sustainability, even if the planet dies, right? One nation refusing to participate, the whole planet dies. Same with China. China developing, using much of its energy comes from coal, right? And burning coal. And the coal gives these, all these poisons into the atmosphere and all kinds of CO2 into the atmosphere. And it's as if somehow, you draw these boundaries around China, and anything that it puts into the atmosphere is the right of China. It's our air. But we all know it's not their air, is it? That air is all of us, because the air is planetary. It's part of the Earth system. Just like the oceans, the waters are part of the Earth system, and the forests are part of an Earth system. And so this system of sovereign nation states violates the integrity of the Earth system. And I want to suggest that it is impossible for us to achieve sustainability on this planet as long as we maintain this system of absolute sovereignty that violates the integrity of the planet. All right, China does, so what does the Constitution for the Federation of Earth say? The atmosphere of the Earth belongs to the people of Earth. The essential resources of the planet, of the planetary biosphere, belong to the people of Earth. The oceans, who do the oceans belong to? All right, we have the 1994, I think it was 1992 or 4, the Convention on the Law of the Sea. It was approved by 60 countries and therefore went into effect. And I think it was 1992. The United States did not sign it. Right? The worst polluter of the seas did not sign it. The Convention on the Law of the Seas is not protecting the oceans. Right? The oceans are dying. Huge dead zones are appearing in the oceans. The oceans are absorbing all the carbon dioxide that we're putting into the atmosphere. They're becoming more acidic. And to the point where even some species are in danger of suffocating because they're not adapted to this, and the oceans are rising, right? And all of this, the oceans are full of plastic waste. None of this is effectively addressed by the Convention on the Law of the Sea. Since 1984, the global fish catch, right? A third of humanity uses fish as part of its diet. A third of humanity. Since 1984, the global fish catch has gotten less every single year. Right? And so 3/4 of the ocean fisheries are overfished right now, the climate scientists tell us, right? They're overfished, which means that we are actually destroying the ability of the oceans to produce new generations of fish. All of this is taking place, and it is unstoppable because of the system of absolute sovereignty. So this is what, if we want a sustainable future, this is the direction that we have to go. And in my book, I argue that there are 5 features to sustainability. The Constitution is involved with all 5 of these features. So I want to describe the features to you and the way in which the Constitution integrates with those features. The first thing we have to do as human beings, if we want to design for a living planet, is internalize the holism that has been discovered by the sciences throughout the 20th century and now in the 21st century. In 1900, Max Planck discovered the quantum of energy, right? And the whole picture of the way energy operates began to be transformed to a holistic picture. In 1905, Einstein published his special theory of relativity. And from that period on, we began to see the universe as an integrated whole, right? That space, time, matter, and energy are not different dimensions, as Isaac Newton had said in the 18th century, but the space, time, matter, and energy are part of an integral holism. And breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough throughout the 20th century, right to the present, has shown us that everything is integrated with everything else in this universe. Right? Everything is interdependent with everything else. And yet our nation state system said, oh, all these 193 are independent of one another. They recognize no holism above themselves. Right? And our global economic system says, oh, all these corporations and people are independent, competing with one another to increase their wealth and their standing and their power. Right? Both of those are utterly unsustainable. They're utterly against sustainability. We will never have sustainability as long as we have that antiquated economic system going back all the way to the Renaissance, right? When the gold makers first began to save the gold for people and issue certificates on behalf of that gold, and people began to take money, loans for debt repayment and so on. This whole system, 5 centuries old. But here we are in the 21st century. It's time for a new system, a non-growth, qualitative economic system, right? And the nation-state system, scholars say it was first. It evolved, of course, in a number of different ways, but it was first officially recognized in 1648 at the Peace of Westphalia. And after the 30 Years' War in Europe, they met at the Peace of Westphalia, and they decided this is the way Europe will be organized. That each government will have clearly defined boundaries, and each government, king or monarch within those boundaries will have absolute authority to make laws and enforce the laws. And each of these independent unities will be independent of one another. No one above the other, right? The so-called equality of sovereign nations, which of course is a lie because the big nations just ignore that and invade and colonize and use imperialism to do whatever they want. But that's the theory. 1648, 300 years ago, the system that we're still operating under was created. But now we understand that the world does not work that way. It does not work that way economically, and it does not work that way in terms of absolute sovereignty of nations. We are one people. Think of the name of this conference. One moment, one world. We're one civilization. We're all human beings on this planet. And unless we actualize that unity, I don't see where we have a ghost of a chance. The wonderful scientific work that is being done by this institute and the people talking here, it is tremendous. It gives us great hope. But that hope needs to be contextualized within a transformative process, making us into one world, one democratic world order. So the Constitution for the Federation of Earth does that. And it creates a world parliament. And the world parliament has 3 houses to it. A House of Nations. So every nation has 1, 2, or 3 representatives to the House of Nations, depending on its population. Right? Big nations like India, 3 representatives in the House of Nations. It has a House of Counselors, and there are special, I won't go into it, but there are special ways that people are elected who we expect will be experts, researchers, visionaries, moral leaders, and so on, who can get into the House of Counselors. 200 of people in that house, from 10 each from 20 different regions around the world. So you've got the House of Nations, the House of Counselors, and then the House of Peoples, right? The world divided into 1,000 electoral districts by population. And every one of those electoral districts, they're electoral and administrative districts, every one of them works together to democratically elect a representative to the House of Peoples. So you've got a world parliament that legislates effective, enforceable law for the planet. And everything is predicated on the common good. Right? Everything is predicated on the fact that the atmosphere of the earth belongs to the people of Earth. The oceans belong to the people of Earth. The forests, the Amazon basin belong to the people of Earth. They don't belong to private corporations or the Brazilian government. So the 5 things that I talk about in this book, the first one is that we have to internalize holism. Really begin to think holistically, not just as an abstract theory, but how can we reframe our ways of thinking and so on. The second item is that we have to establish ecological economics. We have to find ways that we can provide food, clothing, and shelter for the people of the planet without growth, without quantitative growth. You cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet. They say this over, the ecologists say this over and over again. You just can't do it. We have to convert to qualitative factors in economics. And if you read Kate Raworth's book, for example, Donut Economics, it's a wonderful vision that she has. She says that economics is not about iron laws. That's what the capitalist dogmas say. Well, there are iron laws of economics that we have to follow. No, that's not true. Economics, she says, is about design. How do we design our relationships? How do we design our economic interactions, interchanges? If we design it differently, the consequence is different, right? That's what systems theory has understood, right? The way you design a system, it has certain consequences, and we can predict those consequences. So first we've got to have internalized holism. Secondly, we've got to have ecological economics. The third thing we must do is promote spiritual and moral growth. There are dozens of psychologists, spiritual leaders, thinkers, and philosophers who have a broad consensus that there are stages in human growth that can be identified. And among the different thinkers, the stages are articulated with different names and so on, but there's a broad commonality there. And the first stage is egoism, right? So often associated with being young people. You know, I suddenly, as a young person, I realized, here I am, and so we begin thinking, I, my, me, and so on. But if the growth continues, and of course, there's a lot of people who are older who are still in that stage, right? Some of them are billionaires, right, in this planet. But the second stage they identify as the ethnocentric stage, where we begin to assimilate our culture, right? I'm born here in India, for example, and I begin to realize what a wonderful culture, what a wonderful tradition, all this richness, all these Rabindranath Tagore, I love Tagore myself, all these great thinkers and spiritual teachers and so on. And of course, they do this everywhere. And because people grow up within these frameworks, they think my culture is somehow superior, right? In America, it's their exceptionalism. Oh, somehow we're special. So this kind of ethnocentrism has a positive aspect because I go beyond egoism and I begin contributing to my society. I join the community. I join a church or a temple and so on. I contribute to society. But that is certainly not enough because we live on one planet, right? One holistic planet, one biosphere, one civilization, one common species, Homo sapiens. And so we need to keep growing till we become world-centric, the third stage, right? World-centric people. Karl Marx, in his writings, talked about the need for people to begin thinking in terms of what he called their species being, right? I'm a human being first, right? And it's only second am I an Indian or a Russian or a Chinese person. Right, I'm a human being first, right? Thinking in terms of my species being, my commonality with everybody else. And this is absolutely essential. And I think you can see how all of these things, internalized holism, the preamble to this document says the principle of unity and diversity is the basis for a new age, when war shall be outlawed and peace prevail, and when the earth's common resources shall be used by all without discrimination. The principle of unity and diversity, right? The holism of humanity, right? So the holism is embedded in this in so many ways. And then the second thing, an economic world that is not predicated on growth. And this is because the Earth Constitution says that money creation, one common currency, valued the same everywhere on the planet. Money creation is done without debt. 90% of the money in the world today, 99%, is created as debt. Right? You go to you have a business, you want to go to a bank and get a loan, you want to take out $100,000. The bank doesn't go into the vault and count out $100,000 and bring it out to you. Right? What they do, and this is legal, right? What they have is a certain proportion of their funds they have to keep in reserve, but they're allowed to lend way beyond that portion of funds. So when they write you the check for $100,000, that is created out of thin air. The bank isn't giving you some money that it has in its vault. It's created by the flick of a pen on a computer. It's created as debt, right? And so the real force of that loan is on you, because you have to then somehow pay that principal and with the debt back. And notice that the principle of growth is built right into it, because if I'm taking the loan, the assumption is that I'm going to flourish with my business and I'm going to grow so that I will be able to afford not only paying back the principal, but the interest on it as well. So the principle of growth is built right into that debt system, planetary system. And the Earth Constitution transforms all that. The Earth Financial Institution creates a monetary system for the world that is not debt-based. And therefore, it doesn't have to be growth-based. So and then the third principle that I talked about, which is we should promote spiritual and moral growth through the world-centric level and beyond that to even the cosmic-centric level. Cosmic-centric level is what they talk about in India. Sri Aurobindo talks about the cosmos has become conscious of itself in us, in me, in you. Right? That's cosmic consciousness, right? That's the highest stage, part of the highest. And there are different stages there too, of course. The integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo talks about different stages in the development. But when one begins to realize that this little I, this little me, right, is not just some isolated atom of reality, but it is a product of 13.8 billion years of evolution that has come to fruition in me, and that universe is there, become conscious of itself in me. Right? That's cosmic consciousness. And so this ratifying this, unifying human beings, everybody on Earth beginning to think, oh, I'm born on this planet. I'm born as a human being. I'm part of a community, a planetary community that's going to foster world-centric consciousness and ultimately cosmic consciousness. Right. So then the fourth principle out of the five that I talk about in the book, the fourth principle is to take planetary climate science and institutionalize it. Over and over, the climate scientists are saying we must on this planet treat the planet as a whole. How do we treat the planet as a whole if everybody everywhere and in different countries and so on is constantly just doing their own thing? What we need to do is put the climate scientists in institutions in which they can monitor the health of the planet. and carefully watch what's going on, and then give their reports to the World Parliament so that the World Parliament can act in time to keep our planet on an even keel. And then finally, the fifth one is that we need to give the Earth a brain, right? The Earth, Teilhard de Chardin says that the Earth has evolved from a geosphere to a biosphere, living planet, to a noosphere, that is to a world that has consciousness all around it. And if you and I take out our cell phone, you know, we can tap into that noosphere, that planetary consciousness. We turn on a television, we're tapping into the mind sphere that encompasses our whole planet. How do we, but that mind sphere now is chaos, right? It's advertising, it's news, it's you know, people announcing this and that. There's no center to it. And the World Parliament will give that mind sphere a brain, give our planet a brain. So we will have 1,500 people from all over the world, from all the nations, from all the world electoral districts, 1,500 people who are thinking in terms of the planet as a whole, as a brain for the planet, as a kind of a symbol of our common consciousness on this planet. And unless we do that, unless we can begin thinking like a planet, we will not have a sustainable future. Right? And so all those things are left out, as I was saying, by the UN Universal Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals. So what I'd like to do is stop there. I don't know if there's more time or not, but and we can take a few questions. Do we have time? What is our schedule?
I think what we are doing, we are avoiding questions as of now.
Avoiding questions?
Yes, we are not keeping it open because of the time constraint. Of course, you know, these are open-ended talks.
Okay.
So that's why we are not taking questions.
Okay.
It's beautiful, but this will lead to lots of questions.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's the reason, yeah.
So,
But you can share your email address to them so people can write
Yeah,
and reach out
yeah.
to you.
so you can, anybody that wants after you can, I'll give you a flyer, you know, one of these flyers if you're interested. And you can find the Constitution online. We have two main websites. And the one that is based here in India is called WCPA.global. All right, so www.wcpa.global. And on there you can find the links to the Constitution. You can find about our history and all the work that's being done here in India. So anyway, thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate it.
We have no words to thank you, sir. But at the same time, traditionally, the way we've been welcoming the other guests, we would like to say thank you to you also. Once again, sir. A round of applause, please, for this wonderful and remarkable gentleman. Thank you. 5 minutes to be exclusive and specific. And we come back with Dr. Shomajit Roy's talk. Thank you. I think tea is being served here. We can stay here back. Thank you.
essentially embraces all the things. So sorry, I understand you lost me for a couple of seconds. Yeah. So now these processes, what defines life, defines on the other side the very challenging core of understanding of knowledge. So we study phase transitions, we study crystallization and compartmentalization. We induce motion and then we harvest energy. Now, if you integrate all of these together, what you have is an artificial life-like process. Now, we define this soft matter state following the definition of the Nobel laureate Pierre Lejeune, and it's a possible model to understand crystallization, and it gives us to study kinetic states, and that's why we can study catalytic phenomena. Now, this has been picked up by several leading researchers of the field. I'll not get into that. Now, this brings me to the design idea. So, you have here the energy at the center, because that's where everything. Now, whether you are thinking of civilizations of higher level, where the world is one, you need still energy, and that defines in which level the civilization is. The moment we have a way to harvest energy, we transcend our levels, because resources window opens up. That is how life forms come into being. That is talking in terms of very concrete words or ideas. So once you have the energy, you need to partition it, because without partition, there is no definition of a particular flow system. You need to have a compartment so that you can do reactions. Because open systems, the universe, for instance, in itself also is an isolated system. That means you need to have a closed system. You need to have partition in order to define pathways, in order to define reactions. You can induce assembly and disassembly. That is essentially the key essence of genetic information transfer, what nature has developed. This assembly and disassembly can induce motion. That is what we try to do. So once you have this framework is what we are going to propose as the integrable and differentiable artificial lifelike system. And this is the present focus of our work. And we have already started publishing this book also. We have already started working on this, and this is something which we have worked together with Professor Ben Hunt and Professor Francis Verport, and you will have a very beautiful, nice overview from Prithvi Mollik, who is sitting in the audience, who was the key person who led this idea into fruition. So what we do, we take a plant, which is a polymeric plant, SOMs, we induce interactions between them. Because of interaction, they come closer, there is motion. When you have disassembly, then you have motion. So assembly, disassembly, that leads to an output. So input is a supramolecular information. Means input is essentially interaction. Now, this is what we see. We see motion as in real life. I'm not showing the video, but I think we will have some videos later from Prithvi. I invite you to see that lecture. This is her work. So you will see this trajectory. These are the real-time experimental data. So it's not bacteria or viruses that move. We make materials move just as bacteria or viruses by using our chemical knowledge. It's doable, it's experimental done. Next is regarding this platform. This has been done by Prithvi Thomas, who is also, by the way, one of the key persons who's from my lab who started this initiative, which inspired me to take this name, Pahel, which is a beautiful initiative taken by the kids, young kids of IISER Kolkata, to reach out to the underprivileged and bring them with education, with food, and with growth. So it's a fantastic project. She's talented in that very much. Right at the same time, she worked on these systems where we took and demonstrated that you start with a discrete ion, you go into extended states of colloids, they then come together to form crystals. So we show phase transitions essentially. Now we pattern crystals of POMs. This is optolithographic patterning. This is the work done with Banerjee. It's optolithographic patterning with which we wrote the name of our institute, and that's how we started. We did catalysis on this, and this has also been highlighted very much in the literature by several groups, like, for example, Professor Masaki Haga, who is one of the leading figures from Japan. So, and this work in turn showed the possibility of photoactivity. That means light can activate our things. And what we did, we then enabled artificial photosynthesis. How we did it? We took these materials, we shine light on them, it goes to the excited state, as you can see from here to here. I unfortunately cannot have the laser pointer, but it's fine. So you see, it goes to the excited state. In excited state, it splits essentially water to make oxygen, and you know the reducing equivalent, the hydrides are created, which are then injected into carbon dioxide to make formic acid. This formic acid, you can break it back into hydrogen and carbon dioxide to harvest energy, right? And this is one of the key technologies which we use for the machine that we have got here. So we use this technology or science to build it into a technology at the time of COVID crisis, so as to enable or support people who were dying because of oxygen. Now, the main focus was not that. The main focus was, can we create energy? Energy from light into chemicals. And then at that time of publication, ours was one of the highest turnover number. Then that turnover number means how many of the products you get per unit of the catalyst in the reaction. And this is a measure of the catalytic efficiency of a process. At the same time, Omoriaki and Chris Chen from the US, they reported a fantastic system, another one, but 2.9 5, they published in Science Article. Now, this beautiful work was led by Shontu Das along with Churanjan Vishwas and others, and this was published in WCPA. Now, another bright student, Joyita Lodh, who I hope is online, now, she took the next step, and not only she was satisfied with carbon dioxide conversion into formic acid, but she said that we should try phenylacetylene going into acetophenol. So that means this is a possibility to make drug molecules, as you know. So you are coupling the things. Now Shonik is there, he is going to present, so we changed the framework. And then we went into a ligand type system. And then with this ligand type system, in collaboration with Wolfgang Schlossberger, we converted CO2 into alcohol. People talk of biofuel, so we have done it. So this is done from CO2 into ethanol. This is a fantastic work by Shonik Paul, and in collaboration with Sabrina Gomlach from Austria. And for this, we were also awarded the Upper Austria Innovations Award, the Landespreis. And this essentially mimics, so to speak, the photosystem that is present in the cells of plants, for instance, right? Those who are from chemistry, you know that porphyrins or porphyrin type systems. So these are porols, by the way. These are modified systems of porphyrins, okay? And these are systems that can harvest the energy and transfer the energy. I'm sorry, the link. So yeah, so I'm back again. So basically what we want to do is what we have shown with our works, just snippets of works, that we are able to harvest energy, partition it, do reactions, induce motion, implement assembly and disassembly so as to develop a complete holistic system which will be like life. So it's a work in progress. And this is the framework, the snippets, and the tits and bits are coming out already. But this will be a step for creating new resources. That is the idea. How we see life. We see life, as I mentioned at the beginning, is interaction of matter and energy with chance. It's in the words of Ilya Prigozhin, who is the founder of, as you know, of irreversible thermodynamics. So we are trying to get away from equilibrium systems, where fascinating things can happen. And with this, I would like to conclude. I would like to thank you. And with the permission of the chair, and with the permission, of course, of the computer system, if he or she allows me, I would like to stream this video, which is from our lab. It's a tool of the video of our lab prepared by our students. So I request this computer or the internet or whatever system is there to allow me to play this. Thank you very much. Video টা ওখান থেকে কিন্তু সেটা না স্ক্রিন শেয়ার করে Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being with us once again this afternoon. And as I was saying, in a nutshell, we can say that it is instrumenting today's challenges to tomorrow's reality, kind of. Okay. And what you are trying to do today at this point of time is another small AV, since the computer is compatible right now. We would like to put up a small AV from Solaire, India, regarding Ohm redox. Right? Okay. Thanksgiving is coming. The storm is losing its arm. Life continues. We are putting in all to be circulation right. Plus, we for this, we need proper oxygen supply. We at Solaire have come up with 4 results that leaders demands demand for oxygen for all and some.
We have the technology to produce those green energies. Now, the regime under it was quite terrible. Still is in India, so there's a huge demand for oxygen. And we came up with the idea to make an oxygen based on
It is lightweight and weighs approximately at 40 kilograms. It has a battery backup runs and can run as long as 7 hours when connected with electricity. The product has obtained ISO 9001 certification and runs on patented technology. Oxygen low rating with 3.5 litres per minute at present. And
we are trying for business use. If you are oxygen is recorded anyone, anywhere, anytime.
So that's all about the oxygen maker, the machine which we have right in front of us. And we would request Professor Pahel and artist in principle, Mr. Arun Kumar Chakraborty, to come here and present this particular machine to Professor Major Sushil Goel. And Mr. Prithvi, sorry, please come forward.
Yes.
We would definitely thank the team of Solaire for having produced this wonderful gadget. And at a time of severe crisis, as Dr. Roy was putting out, we have tried to cater hundreds and thousands of people across the country who fell short of oxygen, who fell short of breath. And that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Team Solaire. We would like Major Sushil Goel to come on stage, please, who is a retired major and varied working experience of over 45 years, 45 years, having served in central government, army corporate sector, education, skill development, and assessment fields. After retirement from the army, he joined the corporate sector and worked in the IT and computer divisions for setting up various operational systems. Later on, he joined Indira Gandhi National Open University, or IGNU as we call it. After gaining experience in the education field, he pioneered computer education at a very affordable price. And there, I believe, is where his catering this academics to hundreds and millions who cannot afford to come to classrooms as a sustainable work in the service of mankind. Professor Goel, please.
Thank you.
Sir.
Good afternoon. I know all are tired. Good afternoon. Oh my God. Somajit, you need to arrange lunch quickly for them, and I'll not take much time. I'll not take much time. Okay, thank you so much, Somajit, for inviting us, me and Dr. Glenn over here. It was a really pleasure, and we're really grateful to you for such a gesture for us. Well, I started my career way back in 1973 in computer and central government as a computer programmer. Well, in 1990s, there was a time when if you do not have a working knowledge on a computer, you won't get a job. Today, in next 4 to 5 years time, if you do not know and you have no working knowledge on artificial intelligence, probably you won't get a job. You need to be an entrepreneur because jobs are going to be very, very less. And whatever jobs are going to be there, they are going to be very, very high caliber. So please pull up yourself and start working on the technology so that you can sustainable in your career. The jobs whichever are going to come up are not going to be same which are there today. These jobs are going to be altogether different, in artificial intelligence, there will be hundreds of fields. In every field, you will be using the AI. So just get onto this, and I don't want to take your much time. Just thank you so much for inviting us, and just work on in case you need any support. Somajit has my contact numbers. We have a portal, LMS portal, where you can get all these. You can register yourself for free. cftedu.in. So on that portal, you can go and learn all these things which is required for tomorrow. We make you future ready. Thank you.
That was Professor Goel talking about getting future ready. Thank you so much, sir. And now a short lecture from A. Malik, IISER Kolkata student, on how we clean water with light and SOM nanobots. Please. We've been hearing about her a lot from her teacher, from the senior. Okay. One second. I'm sorry. We lost it. We're just getting late. I'm sorry. Please, sir. It's a good. Once again, students from IISER, Sritama, Paromita, and Ronan, come forward and thank Professor Goel for being with us. Thank you, sir. Just have a snap together, please. You may now come forward. Thank you. As the computer gets ready, we were in a dubious mood as to when say a big thank you to our friend, philosopher at the same time, Shomujit, Dr. Roy. We asked him to come and dais once again. We would like to give him a big thank you. The students are related, we are related, and the house is related. Another round of applause, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to present our work on how we can clean water with light and soft oximeter-based nanobots. So this is the outline of my presentation. First, I'm going to give a brief introduction on the water crisis that we are facing today and how we'll use soft oximeters and visible light to solve this problem. Then I'll discuss about the design of the nanobots, how to induce motion in them using visible light, and how we can remove organic pollutants from water using these nanobots. So as most of us are aware, water crisis is a real problem that we are facing in India due to unavailability of safe drinking as well as usable water. And due to the unsafe water, most of the communicable diseases are linked to unsafe water. According to water.org, as we can see from this picture, more than 163 million people in India lack access to safe water. Also, according to a report released by Niti Aayog, which is a government-run think tank, 21 major cities in India, they have run out of groundwater. Now, what are the reasons for this water crisis? Most of the metro cities in India like Hyderabad, Delhi, Chennai, Kolkata, there has been a rapid development, industrial boom, increase in population, depletion in groundwater level, as well as lack of stable water policies, which has led to this water crisis. As we can see from the satellite images, these are the satellite images of Lake Uzal in Chennai. So, as we can see from these two images, there is a rapid depletion of groundwater level. Now, this problem is not only the problem of India. The picture is almost same across the world. So, as we can see from this picture released by UNESCO, the percentage of population is far more than the percentage of water supply. So, to address this, recently there has been a conference held at Glasgow where it has been pointed out that in the fight against climate change, water is a great connector. And to achieve the 17 sustainable development goals, water crisis has to be addressed. So the 5 key objectives that has been undertaken in this conference are that they have planned to create an integrated water and climate database, a global hydrological observation system to create the financial approaches to study the effects of melting glaciers and to also solve the problem to live in countries with shared waters. Okay. So now our question was, can we address this problem using soft oxometalite based nanobots? Now, what are nanobots? Nanobots are basically those objects which undergo autonomous motion. As we can see the motion in bacteria, amoeba. Now, nanobots are also present in the human body. These are the kinesin motors which undergo self-propulsion along active filaments, as you can see from this picture, by hydrolysis of ATP. And this motion helps in the prevents the death of these actin filaments. So this motion is very much important. Now, chemists have tried to create or mimic this kind of systems by making artificial nanobots. Now, the main characteristics of these nanobots are they move autonomously in presence of certain stimuli like chemical fuel, magnetic field, electric field, or light. They harness energy from their environment and convert it to mechanical work. These are a few soft oxometalite-based nanobots that has been reported previously by our group, and they are mainly powered by chemical stimulus. So now we plan to switch from chemical stimulus to light as a stimulus. Now most of this light-driven nanobots, they're either powered by UV light or NIL light. Now UV light-driven nanobots are they have a certain disadvantages that UV light is harmful to living organisms, and NIL light, though it is not harmful, the problem is that it is not very readily available. So we plan to use visible light. Visible light has certain advantages, like it is environmentally sustainable, it is a renewable source of energy, it is low cost, low maintenance, and it has a long lifetime. It leaves no carbon footprint, and also 42 to 43% of the sunlight, it accounts for visible light. So we can say that it is readily available. Now for the design of this light-driven nanobot, we have taken TiO2, which is a semiconductor, but the problem with this is photoactive in the UV region. So to reduce the band gap of this material, we have modified its surface with soft oxometalates composed of heptamolybdate and gold nanoparticles. Now from the ACM images, we can see these are spherical particles of size around hydrodynamic diameter around 700 nanometers. Now what we did is, we exploited the concept of limited penetration depth of light in semiconductors. So what happens is, when we shine light from one side of the semiconductor, light penetrates only up to a few layers, and the photocatalytic reaction that is more prominent on the illuminated side. So what happens? The concentration of products, photocatalytic products that are generated, that is more on the illuminated side, and this concentration gradient of products, this promotes this mechanism and propels these particles away from the direction of light, resulting in negative photolysis. I think this is visible from the video. Here, as we can see, for example, this particle, this is moving in a particular direction. Now we have performed these experiments using different intensities of light, and we see that as we is that as we switch on or switch off the light, it is immediately reflected in its motion. That is, as we switch on the light, we see motion in the particle, and as we switch off the light, we see the motion immediately stops. So this provides a better control in the motion of these nanobots. Now, we have used these nanobots for degradation of different organic pollutants. First, we have taken methylene blue dye, which is a widely used dye in textile, leather, as well as paper industries. And as we can see from the electron absorption spectroscopy and the fluorescence microscopy, that in presence of these nanobots, methylene blue dye gets degraded within 30 minutes. We have also taken another organic pollutant, that is benzyl bromide, which is a lacrimeter, and this is immensely irritating to our skin and eyes. And as we observed from this electron absorption spectroscopy and the time-dependent GC-mass spectroscopy, is that at the end of 12 minutes, what happens is the concentration of benzyl bromide, this decreases, and it gets oxidized to benzyl alcohol and benzaldehyde, which are much less toxic than benzyl bromide. And this whole process, this gets completed within 12 minutes. Now coming to the conclusions. So we can ask that what is the advantage of these nanobots over normal photocatalysts? So the motion is the key factor, which is the benefit, which acts as the main benefit for this nanobots. So this motion, what happens is it affects the fluid mixing and transport. So it enhances the whole decontamination process. Also, this motion, it helps in self-cleaning the surface of these nanobots by removing the adsorbed oxidized species, and this helps maintaining the photocatalytic activity. Now, this work has been published in nanoscale and also been highlighted by the Hindu newspaper of India. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge my supervisor, Professor Shomajit Roy, for his guidance and support, my collaborators, Professor Odhikari, Dr. Loshkar, all the faculty members and technical operators of IISER Kolkata, my lab mates and IISER Kolkata for this work and fund. Thank you.
That was Opaprita Murli. And now we would like to do the honors. Once again, our students from IISER, saying thank you to their senior student. Thank you. Dr. Roy, can we complete the student lecture and then we go for the break? Right? Okay. It's now time to call on stage Mr. Shonik Pahel, IISER Kolkata, student lecture. He is going to talk about how we can make ethyl alcohol from carbon dioxide. From here? Yes. Who needs a slide? Yes.
Good afternoon to all. I am going to present my work on how to make ethyl alcohol from carbon dioxide. Why is CO2 reduction reaction? Because from carbon dioxide is causing global warming, and we have increased level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So to use it, we can convert it to ethanol, and ethanol, according to E20 fuel program, can be blended with petrol for a alternative fuel resource for vehicles. Moreover, in electrical processes, can be used as a feedstock and we can convert it to dilute solutions of alcohol. But the secret lies in design of the catalyst, which enhances the activity and selectivity of the process. And if this process is powered by renewable sources of energy like wind or solar energy, it will be a much greener alternative to solve this problem. 26th Conference of Party held recently at Glasgow, where countries came together to discuss how to slow global warming process. Whereas IPCC have warned humanity about the irreversible man-made destruction caused due to global warming. For that, more than 100 world leaders have promised to end deforestation by 2030. World's biggest carbon dioxide emitter, US and China, have pledged to control methane emission and use clean energy alternative in future. India's commitment in this regard, by 2030, India is going to increase its renewable capacity by to 500 gigawatt and install 50% of its power capacity by non-fossil fuel resources, reduce carbon emission by 1 billion tons and reduce carbon emission intensity of the economy by 45%. India proposes to become a net zero emitter by 2070. So, India wants to focus more on electric vehicles, installing more solar power grids, and to convert and to plant more forests and to decarbonize industries. So our strategy to reduce carbon dioxide by electrical stimulus. In literature, there are a number of reports of catalysts reducing carbon dioxide, among which there are metal surfaces, metal oxide surfaces, metal complexes, and enzymes, which faces a common drawback of the fast electroinduction of carbon dioxide to carbon dioxide anion radical, which is thermodynamically unfavorable. Moreover, this carbon oxygen bond strength of CO2 is very high, and its reactivity in water is very low, leading to high operational potential of the catalyst. Moreover, competing hydrogen evolution reaction also decays the activity efficiency of the catalyst. So, a design of a catalyst is very important to reduce this activation barrier to a sufficient level for practical implementation. Thus, we focus our attention to metal complexes, which has ease of design and control over catalyst design. Moreover, it has well-defined spectroscopic signature, and the computational cost to study this kind of catalytic processes is relatively easier. And in literature, we find this tetraphenol kind of ligands are very well explored, among which there are cobalt porphyrins, cobalt halocyanins, and cobalt protoporphyrins, which is found to reduce carbon dioxide to CO and methane. So we explored porol-based catalytic system which has structural similarity with the porphyrin-based moieties for heterogeneous electrocatalytic reduction of carbon dioxide. For this, we synthesize this molecule and we functionalize this para-position of the phenyl ring with S57 OMe chains. This is the first time we synthesize this molecule, and next we think of studying its redox properties by performing homogeneous reaction, carbon acid reaction under homogeneous conditions. And on the cyclic voltammogram, we can see that on the oral ingredients there are two redox, prominent redox peak, one at minus 0.5, one at minus 1.5, showing cobalt 3 getting reduced to cobalt 2 at this potential and cobalt 1 at this potential. Upon exposure to carbon dioxide and water with CST increasing the current density for cobalt 2 to cobalt 1 species. So we now treat these molecules at constant energy source and check the CO2 product by performing NMR studies and GCMS measurements. And here for this homogeneous carbon dioxide reaction, we get formic acid as a product. here the electrochemical data is calculated here, and by varying the potential of electrolysis, we see there are 4 different products being formed. One is formic acid, another one is CO, another is hydrogen and methane. But the major is the formic acid. We also study the ionic isotopic effect of the reaction, where we systematically vary the amount of water and H2O in the reaction mixture, and we record the voltammograms, and from the change in the rate constant of the reaction, we can actually find the kinetic isotopic effect, which comes around 2, indicating our carbon dioxide getting substituted by 2 protons. So to increase the reducibility of carbon dioxide, we immobilize these molecules over heterogeneous support. For in our case, it is carbon paper electrode, which is nanostructure, and we constructed 2 compartmentalized cell where oxidation happens at the platinum counter electrode, and electrons are being supplied, and here the carbon dioxide molecules get reduced. And the change in presence and absence of carbon dioxide is clearly designated that in presence of carbon dioxide, the current density increases. And we have performed potential electrolysis at different potential, and here only one potential is shown that its stability with respect to Faraday efficiency has been observed over a period of 5 hours. We have performed we have studied the effect of carbon dioxide on potential, or the potential effect on the carbon dioxide reduction, and at different potential we have detected and quantified the major products which comes to be hydrogen, acetic acid, formic acid, ethanol and ethanol. And the minor products detected formaldehyde and glycol. For product detection and quantification, we have used 1H NMR suppression technique, which clearly indicates the formation of these species like formic acid, ethanol, acetate. We have also validated this data with GCMS measurements, and we have studied carbon dioxide reduction in presence of 13 isotopic level CO2. We showed that for normal ethanol, the M/Z comes around, the molecular peak comes around 46, which shifts by 2 M/Z units upon 13 exposure to 13 CO2. Similar has been observed for methanol, where there is a shift of 1 M/Z unit. We have revalidated this data with 13C measurements, where we see doublet arising due to presence of 2 13C units in the ethanol case and for acetic acid, clearly confirming that the product that we have observed is from catalytic conversion of carbon dioxide. We have further studied spectroelectrochemical Fourier transformation FTIR studies, where we increase in potential from black line to orange line, we see there is an increase in the CH stretching frequency, indicating the increase in the carbon dioxide reduction. Then we propose a single site mechanism for the catalytic transformation happening, and we can see that we have observed that cobalt 3 present in our coral motif gets reduced to cobalt 1, where carbon dioxide molecule comes and gets absorbed, and instantly a charge transfer happens, which leading to formation of carbon dioxide anion radical indicated in the or detected by the IISER measurements for S equals to half, G equals to 2, and high perfect splitting of cobalt was also observed. Upon further reduction, it gets converted to formic acid type intermediate next to formyl radical. Now, this is a key intermediate for formation of the C2 product, because upon high potential of reactivity, it gets dimerized to form glycol intermediate, which is a readily reducible intermediate, and upon subsequent reduction forms ethanol. And upon low potential of reactivity, it gets reduced to form formaldehyde, which was detected in trace amounts, and which get further reduced to form ethanol. So, in conclusion, our catalyst proceeds via a formic acid pathway, because formation of the CO pathway leads to gaseous evolution, where there is evolution of the reduced product from the system telling the catalysis to follow a multi-electron induction pathway, whereas the CO intermediate yields, the formal intermediate yields methanol as well as glycol, which was further confirmed by performing reduction studies of glycol in the potential window, which obtained ethanol exclusively and at very low bar potential. And heterogenization in the form of supramolecular interaction also plays a very important role. As we can see that between homogeneous and heterogeneous catalysis, we see a huge change in the product distribution. This work was published in Nature Communications. And in acknowledgement, I want to thank my supervisor for his constant support, my collaborator, Gurgen Fukalkar, lab mates, technical operators, friends and family, and IISER Kolkata and UGC for funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would like to thank you also equally for that lovely presentation. This is also a kind of a journey. The young students, they are felicitating and saying thank you to their seniors. Thank you. It's now time to call on stage Mr. Shahid Ali Farooqi, who is working as system administrator at IISER Kolkata right now. He volunteers at various open source projects. He's mentor Mozilla Reps program and have chaired the Mozilla Reps for more than once. He's very much into the FOSS community building and monitoring various communities. That's, again, all about sustenance. He's going to talk on, I believe, open web and innovation. Mr. Farooqi, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, I'm audible? Okay. So, my talk is slightly different with the theme of this conference. So, I will be mostly talking about open web and innovations. Basically, the Mozilla mission aligned with the open web and innovations happening within Mozilla. So, this is a little bit of about myself. I do volunteer for various open source free and open source software projects. Mozilla is one of them. I am a FOSS activist, advocate free and open source system across basically the country. Yeah. So I love use and promote open source software systems. And I am more into community building. When I say community, it means open source community. So I am associated with Mozilla since 2011. I am mentoring various communities in India and abroad. So we have about 250 plus Mozilla reps across the world. And we have very strong presence in India. We have 2,000 plus millions in India. And we are very much into teaching and learning open web like day-to-day activity. So, and we have a new project called L10N. L10N is basically localization. I'm also part of it. So we invite people from different language. So if they want to use Mozilla products in their native language, so this is about the L10N project. And the idea is basically to present, to represent Mozilla in your region, to represent your region in Mozilla. So this is all about L10N. So open web and innovation. The open web platform is collection of open technology which enables the web. So a lot of open web related basic activities are happening within Mozilla. Using the open web platform, everyone has the right to implement a software component of the web without requiring any approval. Basically freedom, software freedom. As I mentioned, Mozilla mission is very much aligned with open innovations and open web. So we are trying our level best to build a better internet for the people. As we believe that internet is the world's largest public resource created by the people, created for the people. So we are a global community of technologies, thinkers and builders working together to keep the internet alive and accessible to the people. And we are protecting world's largest public resource, which is internet. And internet is a global public resource, open and accessible to all. So as I mentioned, a lot of open innovations, basically projects and things are happening around Mozilla. Like any other organization, Mozilla is also doing a lot of open innovation experiments. Mozilla's program is also part of innovation team. So I'm basically associated with the Mozilla program. Open innovation team exists to help Mozilla products and technologies team move more intentionally towards open methods in design. The team works across organizations, designing the necessary infrastructure. So what is the role of open innovation team? So we help in shaping strategy for delivering values through open methods. Being practitioner of open methods, delivering excellence in engaging external stakeholders. So Mozilla recently developed an open innovation toolkit. This is basically a design concept. So the three parts you can see, and we do like prototype and test. So as part of toolkit, the open innovation toolkit, the Mozilla is a community. It's a community effort, community developed idea, and set the instrument for incorporating design in your innovation development product or service. It is a catalog of easy to use, practical and quick tools divided into three types, as I mentioned in the previous slide: to gather insight, ideate, and prototype and test. So basically, open source software is playing a vital role in shaping the future of open work and open technologies, right? But we always have a problem, like we don't have proper documentation of open learning material for basically learning open source technologies. So I was associated with the spoken tutorial projects when I was in research fellow at IIT Bombay. So I like this idea, and I was, in fact, I'm still associated with spoken tutorial projects. So what we do as part of the spoken tutorial project, we create spoken tutorials first in English, and then we dub in various Indian languages. So and then so this is we call as like self-learning tool, spoken tutorial. This is basically 10 to 15 minutes tutorial on various cost systems. Language is not a barrier, so we have created tutorial in English and then dubbed in 35 languages, mostly in Indian, basically regional Indian languages. Bengali is one of them. This is a good training material, and we are conducting workshops using spoken tutorials. So this slide you see here. So as of now, we have created 12,000 plus tutorials. Total count 140 plus FOSS basically. So we have created tutorials in 140 FOSS systems as of now. And then amazing slide. So this is statistics. As of now, we have conducted 127,000 plus workshops across India. It's a big number. And as of now, we have trained 65 lakh students in India using this spoken tutorial workshop, self-learning tool. This is basically, you can see, this is gender, women and men. And the usage and impact you can understand using this, just seeing this slide. So we have 68,000 hits all day on this website. So you can understand the usability and impact of this project. And I'm currently working on a basically open hardware system. So we're trying to develop a sustainable, low-cost COVID management system using open hardware and basically using various sensor and Arduino board. So this is it in the pipeline. Thanks a lot. That's it from me.
That was wonderful of Mr. Farooqi to have shared his visions, his ideas, his concepts, his work. And we say thank you similarly.
And I have brought few Mozilla goodies that anyone of you interested in contact me.
Our next speaker will be Dr. Pahel, Professor, Director of Brain and Cognition Center, Department of Psychology, Faculty of Education, Hubei University, Wuhan, People's Republic of China. Her research area includes perceptual cognitive processing with eye tracking, EEG, and functional imaging technologies to study the cross-modal neural mechanism of visual and taste system, emotion-based multisensory integration. She has been selected as CIM expert from the German Federal Ministry. Her talk will be on intercultural integration of taste perception. Professor Pahel, thank you.
Thank you, Ashita, for introducing me. And also thanks to all the previous fantastic speakers. And hello, everyone. So before I start my talk, I can read some of the patients maybe already start a little bit impatient and ask when she will finish the presentation and have the lunch soon. So my answer is that I will try to make my presentation short and attractive of a visual taste perception. Okay. So I would like to share some ideas and some experiments and the results about, so that is how motivates me to start the research of this topic. So intercultural integration. Okay. Intercultural integration of taste perception. So taste is regarding the food, which every day is our daily demand. So we cannot live without food. So it's a very important topic, and it's also important to think that how it relates to sustainability. So let's start. So what we can see is just some examples of images that how we choose the sweet, the lunch, or the dinner. And particularly I want to mention because I live in India and in China. And I observed that here, the local culture is that when someone visits a friend or relative, to go to the mystery shop and to take some mystery box and give to the relatives and friends. And I have seen so many times. And in China, it is different. So when we visit friends or relatives, we first think, oh, maybe we buy some food. So that is the common difference which I have observed. And then that made me think that means maybe our taste perception are different. And particularly sometimes I also heard from my husband that, this is not sweet enough. And I think it's very sweet. I think it's enough. So this all motivates me to start the experiments. So already in literature, so color, shape, motion, decoration, space, so how you put on the plate, we have all the experience in the restaurant. That really matters. But how it matters, and it matters in the same way for Chinese, for Indian, for American, can be different or can be the same. So that's the question we want to ask. And I will share some experiments how we do it, because as scientists, I think the advantage that we observe some pattern, we ask some question, and we can design experiments and get answer. So this is actually the concept. So usually from our life experience or living experience, we observe that what I saw, the mystery gives or fruit gives. That is the difference. So that is the behavior level. So what we can observe from our life experience. And then a scientist, they can design experiments and then to figure out what is the mechanism behind it and if we can manipulate it. Because I think many people are interested in how we can eat healthy, joyful, without getting fat, or more healthy and sustainable or to live longer, right? I think many people are interested. So we can design experiments to answer one question, like do shapes and semantic familiarity of words can influence our taste or sweet taste, for example. Because the public parks or the cake shops, for all different kinds of shapes, and also like on the food package. Some people think maybe it's fancy to print French words. Anyway, that looks so fancy, right? But if that really works or impact or actually reduce your taste perception, we don't know. So that's how we start the experiment design. So we just designed two sets of stimuli. So one is this just simple geometric shapes. So basically the difference among these is just the one is more circular and one is more angular, like a circle and triangle. So basically these two groups. And the other set is just different words. Because we want to test if you are how familiar with the words, that will help change your influence, or how you aren't familiar with the words and how it works. So these are the two sets of the stimuli, and then we can just simply start the experiment. So I will invite students come to my lab and sit in front of the computer, and on the monitor we will randomly show one of the figures, like a triangle or circle or ellipse. And so in this random order. And then we will, after we see a picture for some seconds, like 5 seconds, we will ask the student to test a series of sugar water. And so this sugar water is from 0 concentration to 5.5. So how will this really depends on previous literature we have tested. So that's why we choose this concentration. But the concept is that from low to high, we randomly ask them to taste sweet or not. They have to answer, and with visual exposure of one picture. And then in this way, we can test the taste sensitivity with different visual pictures. That is the idea. And the same, we will also test with the words. So just to directly show the results. So because I have some years before, I have the advantage of the research experiments in India and in China. So that's why I can compare this taste perception of two different groups of students. So these are the results of Chinese students. So these horizontal lines, that means different geometric shapes we present to the subjects. And the vertical lines means sweet taste ratio. 1 means 100% they feel sweet. And 0.4 means 40% of detection ratio. So in this way, we can compare that when the students see this picture, how is the taste sensitivity or sweet sensitivity? In this way, we can just compare it. So we can see that these two seems higher than that, and we do standard test, and we found that this circular group actually increase our taste sweet sensitivity, and the other did not. The same experiments we also performed in Indian students. So we modify a little bit, like this is circular, this is a little bit irregular and also circular shapes, and these are angular shapes. So basic concept is that one is circular, one is angular, and we compare and we observe the same pattern. Means, so you see this circular pattern, the sensitivity is higher than that angular. So that makes us think. When I tell the results to other people, they cannot imagine what you just see. A triangle or circular that will make you feel sweeter? I say yes. People don't think like that, but actually happened. And regarding the other set of the stimuli, like the familiarity of the words, so we observed the results that this is the data from China. So this first two. 007 and the McDonald's, so that is McDonald's. So it's very popular word. Everyone is familiar with that. So when subjects see these two words, the sensitivity also gets higher. Sweet sensitivity goes higher. And this Yao Xing Pei, and this is most unfamiliar Chinese words from what we found from the Chinese dictionary. And this is a German word, 159. So this is also because the subject is not learned German, so for them it's also very unfamiliar. So in this way, we also find that if the subjects are more familiar with the words, then the sweet sensitivity also increased. So come to the Indian students, so I modified the stimuli, use the English McDonald 007. So why we choose 07? It's also because the James Bond effect, and people immediately think that, oh, okay, I know it. So the familiarity is also higher. So we observed similarly. So you see, when the Indian students very familiar with the word, the sensitivity also goes higher compared with this German word, Chinese word, much lower, significant. So this comes our first summary. So that shows, number one, circular shapes increase our sweet sensitivity. The familiarity of the words, if we see it, also increase our taste of sweet sensitivity. And to compare of two different countries, even though here the sweet threshold we have tested is around 5 grams per liter, which is higher than Chinese students, so it's around 3 grams per liter. But the influence pattern, what we have seen, get familiarity and the shapes, the influence pattern is the same, that remains the same. So that makes us think, why this happens? How can we explain that? And with that, we can use different tools. We can use different tools, means we can use EEG, like put the electrode on the brain, and we can record the brain signals when they perform the sensing. And also we can use fMRI, which I will also mention later. So this is another very simple experiment, because people don't, when I introduce these results at the beginning, people cannot believe it. Then I think we need to find some evidence. And how we find it? So our hypothesis that Y-track circle can enhance or can increase the sensitivity is because the circular shape make human beings into cognitive ease state. So that means when you see you have experience. When you go to choose the sofa, a chair, you want to see more round, more soft, this type of feature. So that this type of feature, circular feature, can induce our brain into cognitive ease, make us more comfortable. And so that's why we prefer that circular shapes, and that actually synchronize with our speech perception. So what our hypothesis is that this circle, so circular shapes, maybe will have similar effect when we have, because when we see this smiling face. This also shapes, these emojis similar when we everyday chat on the mobile computer. So these are very often used emoji, what we now having every day. So we want to compare if this has similar effect as what we see in the smiling face, and the triangle if we see the angry face. So we just randomly show this on the computer and ask the students to wear the EEG cap, and we analyze the results. It shows. So I will not go into the technical details, but I just summarize the results. So because the EEG advantage of the EEG that we can roughly identify this here, this location of the brain, and also we can precisely analyze the time component, which is very significant. So if they have similar pattern, that means, so like this red line is the face, angry or smiling, and this black line is the triangle and circular geometry. So this actually pattern, what we have observed, all are similar. So what does it mean? It means it supports our hypothesis that just when we see the circle, it induces similar response pattern like we see the smiling face. We see a triangle response in a similar if we see an angry face, but of course in a mild amplitude. So that is our observation from the EEG results. Additionally, EEG has the advantage of the time scale response for us to observe, And the other is that we also use the fMRI machine to scan the brain when we let the students line in the machine. So we can scan the brain activity. So in that way, we can very precisely locate how it happens when you see, that's a watch, circular or triangle, for example. In this way, so we also randomly, so we can display. There is a huge monitor behind it. There is a mirror, so the students lie down next on the mirror. They can see the monitor, what it shows, and then we can analyze the response from the brain. So this is just the results what we have analyzed. So here is when the subjects is watching the circular shapes. So these are by different color highlighted. These are the response pattern. So the more red, that means more positive activated, more blue, negative activated. So what we can see that at least the circular shapes and the angular shapes look different among the students. So that is so far what we have so what we have got to support that really when our brain, just by simply watch the triangle and the circle, our brain really responds differently. So that leads to how it influences our taste also differently. So now come to the end. So this summary. So number one, we have shown the experiments and the results that really the shapes and the words can influence our sweet sensitivity. And number two, that even that compare different cultures with Indian and Chinese students, so even the sweetness threshold are different, but the impacting of vision influence the taste remain the same. And also that what that makes us also think that, for example, how we can apply this in the future, or in the future, how we can design more experiments to eat more healthy. So like without adding more sugar, but with the same sweet. So that gives us the direction maybe to eat more healthy, joyful, sustainable. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Very interesting subject.
Yeah, that was truly very interesting, and what a way to express through the research. Vision influences our taste, color, shape, word, space, and motion. Thank you. Let's once again say thank you to this wonderful lady. We would now like to call on Professor Arun Kumar Chakraborty, who has a remarkable fine arts background. He is an artist, and at the same time, he's an avid student of astrophysics. So today, he is going to present something. He'll tell you about that first. The synthesis of intellect and fantasy. So Professor Chakraborty on stage, and then probably I'll read out his material. So,
thank you, Ashish. Thank you. Thanks, Ashish. Thank you, Professor Glenn and Professor Goel, Pei, and overall Shomujit for making this afternoon a wonderful afternoon. So, formless with the forms of art, philosophy, and science, and their synthesis. The next few slides will take you to the journey with which I believe will embark on journey that is the destination. I hope you enjoy the story of intellect, fantasy, and science for the next few minutes. now actually I will hand it over to Ashish for the visual and my thoughts that I have. He will take over from here.
Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty. This visual will be supported by Mr. Chakraborty's research. Intellect, fantasy, and synthesis. The sense of emotion, rather as sentiment, and the particle sensed to the body differs from the synchronized I, as well as the fleshy, skeletal, and the juicy combinations. The sensuality of the pineal gland disposes every material object from its lust for heavenliness. Somehow it relates to physical, chemical, and psychological changes during the surrealistic dilemma of intelligence. The nature of our subconscious states gives a significant pattern of physical postures inherited from the genetic stature. The inner code of secretion generated by a stimulating gland that creates every momentary activity, vice versa to our mind and body. It seems body to be the key factor that reciprocates to the negligible outcome of chemical emission. The presence of an inherited structure defies all reasons to be one of the other elements under a momentous kinship terminates. The insoluble conduct of every particle connects to a natural phenomenon of constancy, if not reacts to the predominance of instability. The process is inevitable. However, when we say, "Who am I?" and from where I came, the quest goes on. The dissatisfaction of every individual philosophy constrains our identity of being a superhuman as death strikes back. More of the intellect assimilated by the evolutionary process gives up to an infinite abstraction in space and time. The endless superimposition of nature confronts with sublime energy of being something from nothing. The pleasure of non-entity endows the existing incorporation to its contrary. The permutation and amalgamation that we excrete mere resolves a part of the particular sense in reality. A brief encounter of positive and dark energy, as it is the reinforcement of powers generated by magnetic and electrical sources. The process of decoding the gesture from the outer space gives an abstract interpretation of nuance into the worldly being. Subsequently, it becomes a text of an individual to its perpetual unconscious. Nothing seems to escape the potential growth of neither the past nor the essential being the present or the degenerating facts of future. Abundant explosion of the star brings an outcome of intense juxtaposition of the gamma rays to eradicate God from existence as the mass fester into the never-ending black hole. Quasars that emits the electromagnetic energy leads to event horizon, a gateway into the new sector that assimilates the ingredient of wormhole. The necessity of rationalism confronts with every now and then, which surpass a tranquil beauty of existence. Nevertheless, one's endless search for the identity as a whole completes the circle. The flavor of rhythm gathers an intricate colonial harmony from the connotation of Big Bang. Every sense of structural and non-structural pattern gives a statutory thought to prevail the magnitude of endurance. The dynamic structural mechanism evolves its formation repeatedly until the energy derived from the non-representational form gets a stationary outcome. It seems to take an explicit form that passes a light year when combined with some unknown feature that correlates to a paradox of improbability. The status that follows the organism of predestined unintentionally confronts with the thoughts of catastrophe, though it simply happens at a given time. Salvation defies the intricacy of contentment, unarmed in the dense cosmic sphere, orbiting a life course of texture, where space activates a cross-section of interpoles modulated in every alternate trail. The frozen, fluid, and gaseous states are the volunteers that undergoes with the energy transported through space. As energy transacts in different catastrophic identity, it degenerates until it reaches its dispersion. The process of elimination differs from every biomolecular part to its organic separation. Further, the process continues until a star is born. The source, transmitted through amino acid, creates ample growth of chromosomes that diversifies endless structural forms of existence. The stagnation of energy in life, created through a technical anatomic classification, keeps liveliness dormant unless externally charged from silence to awakening. However, the combustion monitors the duration of continued existence rather the specific always. Organic cell collapses every moment to create a new identity. The inner ability to perform sustains the complex arrangement of being alien. The capacity to consume and act, and the aptitude to decapitate resolves the intense power of that structural dynamics. The gene reacts to every oncoming matter to harmonize, generate, and withhold its properties until an innovative endorsement comes up to repeat the whole procedure, and it continues. The probability of every component has its limitations, but thoughts endeavor innumerable boundaries to elaborate those complex sets of undiscovered fundamentals. However, the neoclassical pattern exists through rotations of interdependent factors submerged in the cosmic ambience. A single atom that controls the growth of every individual form prescribes a critical juncture of verse which denotes hundreds of living matters until the origin submerges into the complex structural deformation. Termination of this existence comply the facts of balancing the imbalance, but still it exists in its transformation. He sums up by saying, knowledge which expresses theory by perception of experimentation through every individual assortment, but also that acknowledges relativity. Ignorance is bliss, gives the note that signifies nothing but the state of captivated happiness. The in-depth of molecule signifies a unique model which exists in every clarification of a multidimensional prototype that survives in the natural world. Thoughts that ensure us of being stardust actively motivate to be the roots of the origin. Hence, to determine the lifespan of modern theory gives a protagonist emblem to the Milky Way, to the Andromeda, or to some anonymous cosmos. That is from Mr. Arun Kumar Chakraborty, Principal, Rekhachitram. Thank you. We would like him to come on stage once again, please, and say a big thank you to this remarkable artist. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a wonderful morning and afternoon, and we are at the fag end of this conference of ours. I would once again request Dr. Shomajit Roy to give Thanksgiving. Prior to that, we had with us since the morning Mr. Anup Motilal, who's been a remarkable person, who's been associated with this venue, Ravindra Tirtho, for a long, long time, has been chairing various posts. I've been associated with the Indian Museum, and he's presently the curator of Ravindra Tirtho and Nazrul Tirtho, which is just a walk away from here. We would like him to come on stage and share a few words. That would be a wonderful journey for us too. So.
It's my proud privilege to be here today in this August occasion, but I am an odd man out in this assembly of distinguished scholars. I am my profession, I am a civil servant. I was a civil servant, so I couldn't understand so many things, but I was amazed with the diverse lectures, subjects, contents that have been presented today in this morning, this afternoon. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy to help these organizers to organize this seminar within a very short time. Professor Roy approached me only 2 days back, and and when he came and approached, I couldn't think that it will be on 8th of December. I thought that he has a planning and it will be done sometime. So I told him yes, it's possible. But immediately day after, he came and said that it will be held on 8th of December. So I had to rush and do so many things, tie up so many things to get it done over here in this short time. I'm very happy that I have been able to help him out, him and the organizers. It was an experience to hear the distinguished speakers here over today. Professor Chakraborty's speech, I really got confused. I will speak to you separately to understand what you wanted to say. And Mr. Glenn Martin's speech was excellent, splendid speech. I was overwhelmed with the speech. Thank you so much.
Once again, at the end of this journey of ours this afternoon, as I call on Dr. Roy once again, I will just use this line to sum up from my part. Pablo Picasso says, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." We found our gift, respected speakers, in you. And we hope that you leave it with us this afternoon. Thank you.
So everything comes to an end, and so is this symposium. I know that I'm standing between lunch and some formalities which need to be done. First of all, I request the students, before going into the vote of thanks, request the students, Sritoma and Ronak and Supona, Parvita, to felicitate Professor Anup Motilal. I request him to come to the stage and please
Hina, your mic is open.
Now I would request Professor Ashish Hajra to come and be felicitated by the students. So, yeah, Professor Ashish Hajra, please.
Thank you very much. I always wanted to be on the other end.
Now I would like to conclude the session by conveying the vote of thanks and the conclusion. The conclusion is left with you, the listeners. The presenters have presented. The conclusion will be, for instance, the journey forward. Can we integrate this type of systems thinking to develop sustainable world, translate technologies, and create art so that this journey becomes a destination itself? We are not looking for destination. We are looking for dialogues. And that, with that note, I would like to conclude this meeting. So that concludes the meeting, but I would like to convey the most important and most challenging task, that is the vote of thanks. So first of all, I take apologies for any omission. So I would like to thank especially a lot of young kids who were there orchestrating and doing this work, this event a possibility. Of course, this has been made possible because of Professor Glenn's visit, Professor Goel's being there, Professor Chakraborty and all the speakers, and of course to Professor Shourabh Pal for giving us this opportunity to hold it in the framework of IISER Kolkata. And I'm very much thankful to IISER Kolkata for the support, tech support, and for the entire event. I would also like to thank our partners, the educational partners, for example, who have helped us. And also I would like to thank HIDCO, especially Mr. Shen, for in such a short time giving his august presence, enlightening us with such a wonderful lecture. I would like to thank all the speakers once again, all the student volunteers, and also people from outside, and Khash Khobor as well,